Anyway, again, welcome. I'm Dan Calderon from the Sheriff's Office with the Sheriff's Personnel. Just like a number of other people that are here, I was here about 16 years ago, and yes, Eric Fricky was still working here running security at that time. So it's good to see that he's now running the show here. At the Sheriff's Department, we look for a lot of different things. What we like to call them are the big three. The Deputy Sheriff position, briefly law enforcement career opportunities, the Deputy Sheriff position, and that's about 3 different ways to get into that. You have what are called the trainee position, which is an entry-level job. You have other people that have put themselves through the training. We call those postgraduates. So that person has either gone to Allen Hancock or Ventura County Sheriff's Academy or LA Sheriff's Academy as a non-affiliate, putting themselves through it and encouraging that they can get a job in law enforcement that way. Right now, that seems to be one of the real popular ways to get into law enforcement. Due to the budget and, obviously nobody locally is really hiring a lot of deputies right now, or officers for that matter. What a lot of people are in favor of doing is incurring the expense of their own training in hopes that they can come to us, and when those floodgates do open next year, the year after that, they're going to be the people that we're going to want to hire, because first of all, as Lieutenant Woodham was saying, there's that lag time. You take somebody and they're basically not necessarily of no use to you, but they're not going to be able to work as a solo deputy or a solo officer for at least a year, most cases about 1.5 years. So at least we've taken that 6 months out of the equation. We get them, we put them directly on field training. The other way that people come to us are what we call lateral positions, and that's usually from either a smaller agency or out of state or a different sheriff's office, and they'll come to us as an officer, veteran that basically just wants to live in the area, has an opportunity to be here, and they'll basically come in as an officer, good to go, ready to go to patrol. The second opportunity we have with the Sheriff's Department is the custody deputy position. It's a complete career path. We have line-level custody deputies that actually work in the jail. They do all the things that a regular deputy would do in a traditional sheriff's department, but they're only sworn during the course of their duties. In other words, if they see something going on in the street when they're off duty, it's probably not a good idea for them to take action. Basically, don't get involved with that. There's the custody deputy supervisors, custody deputy sergeant, lieutenant, all the way up to custody deputy commander. So like I said, it's a complete career path, and some people make careers of it. A lot of people will do that job for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Other people use it as a stepping stone to get into the deputy sheriff position. They'll do it for maybe 1 or 2 years. Some people do it even 5 years if they're really young when they start with their job with us, and then they'll make the transition to deputy sheriff. The last thing that I want to talk about is the communications dispatcher position. And as I was said earlier, it's a really, really difficult position. It's a thankless position, but it's an important position. It's probably one of the most important positions in our department. I trained in the dispatch center very early on in my career, just one of those things where it was going to give me an opportunity to go in there, make some extra money, work overtime there. I couldn't do it. Too difficult. I'm not smart enough to be a dispatcher, but I'm just smart enough to be a cop. So. We've already talked about the hiring process of Santa Barbara City Police Department. Our hiring process is just about the same. They kind of run parallel. We have a few differences. What we'll do, and a number of you look familiar from various testing processes, or I may have spoken to you out in Isla Vista, who knows. But the way it starts is we have what's called a Supplemental Questionnaire, and that's essentially a document that you're going to give to us. It's 2 pages. We're going to look at it. You have a lot of speeding violations or other traffic citations, things of that nature. The second page is going to deal with drug usage, things of that nature. Okay, looking at that and just taking that on face value, it says if there's something that's we consider disqualifying criteria, we're going to say, hey, you know what? Come back to us in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, or in certain cases, you're really going to have a difficult time ever getting hired in law enforcement. It's a choice that you made. Sometimes you're going to have to live with it. But again, if you're honest with us, and if it's something that's not, too bad, we're going to move forward. We're going to invite you all to a written test and then the physical agility test. That's for deputy sheriff and custody deputy. It's not for dispatch. There's no physical agility test for that. There's no written exam for the dispatcher test, but it's a computer-driven module test, and a number of you, I believe, have taken that before too. The next step beyond that's the oral board. I can't impress upon you enough to know a little bit about the job, understand why you're there. A few years back, we were doing mass hirings in anticipation for a lot of people retiring due to a contract that we had just negotiated. We wanted to hire about 40 deputies, get them ready. And I sat on about 120 oral boards one week, and the most interesting thing I saw was one person, we asked him, it's going to be the same question no matter where you go. Why do you want to work in law enforcement? Why do you want to work for the sheriff's department? Why do you want to work for the police department? It's basically the same question. So it was my turn, it came around, and I had to ask this gentleman, why do you want to work for the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department? Looked at me, shrugged his shoulders, and he said, no reason. And I thought about trying to, pull something out of him for a moment there, and just like, maybe you didn't understand the question. But I didn't want to. I just moved on to the next question. If that person was that unprepared, then they don't need that job. They don't deserve to go forward. So, oral board. After that, now think of this in terms of a labyrinth. If you misstep during one of these testing processes, you got to go back to the beginning. So, if you're successful along the way, you're going to go to the polygraph examination. We're going to bring you in. We front load our investigations with that to see if you're being truthful to us. We do such a high volume, and there's only a few of us in the office actually doing the work. What we do is we do that up front so we don't waste a lot of time, effort, money, that type of thing working with an applicant. Again, if you're truthful, you shouldn't have any issues. If there's something in your past that you're not proud of, that's quite embarrassing, that's okay. Tell us about it. It's all confidential. I'm not going to tell my wife, my friends, my coworkers. I might want to, but I'm not going to. And if you're truthful about certain things, you're going to be okay. If there's something that you did in the past that you think, oh God, if I tell this guy that I did this or I did that, I'm never going to get hired. That may be the truth. That may be true. But if you lie about it, you'll never know, because once you become untruthful, you're of no use to any law enforcement agency, and that's going to follow you around forever. The next step is the PHS interview, and the PHS is this document that the state put together. It's about 25, 26 pages in length, and I know a number of you have already seen it. I like to tell people, think of it in terms of this, a really detailed job application. It has so much information in there. Okay. We require everybody to fill it out completely. People will come to us and have it filled out halfway, or it's missing a lot of information. Not so much with the civilian positions or dispatch so much, but with the custody deputy and deputy sheriff positions especially. I like to put the onus on these people and tell them that if this were an academy assignment and you brought this to me incomplete, it would be completely unacceptable. So I just can't impress upon you enough, be prepared for every step of the process. Then, and only then, do one of the background investigators actually start doing the real work. And this is where we're going to go out, we're going to talk to people, we're going to talk to your neighbors, we're going to talk to friends, we're going to talk to references, and not just the references that you told us about, not the people who are, that you paid off and told them that to say good things about you. We're going to find people that know things about you. Whether you believe it or not, your neighbors know a lot about you. They know when you come, they know when you go, they know how you drive, they know if you got a bunch of beer cans on the front lawn. They know these things. So it's always good to be a good neighbor. Anyway, after that, provided everything checks out and everything's cool, I just want to go back to the background investigation real briefly. I was speaking with this officer right here, right when I came in today, and we were kind of working an applicant concurrently. Our office didn't hire him, their office did. But based on what we found in our background, they may reevaluate. what's going on with them. So we're going to talk. We know if somebody applies to Santa Barbara PD, to the Sheriff's Office, to CHP, we all know about that. You know, so certain things are going to come out in the background. Okay, this is how it works. Once you pass all those processes, I'm going to give you a call and say, hey, guess what? You're almost there. I'm going to give you what's called a conditional offer of employment. And basically what it is it means that giving you a job offer, but you got to pass 2 more tests. You have to pass the physical examination, so you'll have to go to a doctor. Now, depending upon what position you apply for, if it's a dispatch position, it's a pretty basic exam. Okay? If you're applying for one of our law enforcement positions, it's a full boat physical where they do just about everything you can think of. And if you're over a certain age, they're going to do even more things to you. But bottom line is, if you complete those last 2 processes, complete those, we're going to say congratulations, you're hired, provided there's a vacancy. There's all these other little things that are ways that we can get out of hiring people, but we try not to do that. Try not to do that. Okay. Here's the really basic employment standards. Okay. Now these are for deputy sheriff, custody deputy, and dispatcher. And that's it. That's all you need. You need to have a high school diploma. You got to have a valid driver's license for one of our driving positions, such as deputy sheriff or custody deputy. Be a U.S. citizen and at least 18 years of age. That's the minimum requirement. So yeah, you can be an 18-year-old with a GED and get a job as a cop. Is it likely? No. No. The reality of it is we're getting people with AA degrees, BA degrees, master's degrees. People in our department go on to get their PhDs. We get people with a lot of work experience, a lot of college and military, a lot of life experience. 18 years old, not likely either. When I came on, the average age was about 30 that they were hiring. It's gone down a little bit where we're getting people in their mid to early 20s, 25 to 27, I think is about the average age right now of our employees. At this time, what I'm going to suggest to everybody, I mean, I know everybody wants to get to work and you're all excited about working in law enforcement, and that's cool because it's a great job. It's the best job in the world. But the reality of it, at least locally in this county, is it's going to be difficult for a long time to get a job in law enforcement. We're just not hiring right now. We tested recently for the custody deputy position. We had about 400 applications. Out of those 400, I think close to 200 of them were qualified to actually show up for the testing processes. We had 177 people show up for the test, the physical agility. A few people didn't pass that, but that's okay. That doesn't mean that they can't pass that test again in the future. Those that passed that went on to the oral board and written examinations. Basically, when all was said and done, we're working on a list right now of about 18 eligible applicants. We've called in the first 10 just to get them through the polygraph, through the truth verification. And then we're just kind of putting them on hold for now. At the end of this fiscal year, we'll have a better idea of what's going on. Are we going to be able to hire people? Jail is an interesting animal in that you have to have a certain inmate to officer ratio. You got to hire people and you have to have them in there. So we have 10 vacancies right now currently in the custody deputy position. We want to hire them, and we're likely, it's going to happen. We're likely going to fill those positions. The complete reverse of that, the deputy sheriff position, we have 34 vacancies right now, and by the end of April, we'll probably have close to 40 vacancies in that position. We're not going to fill them. The difference being is that you can kind of move people around in the field. You can do what's called working short. Let's say you have a typical patrol squad of 9, 10, or 14 deputies. Depending upon how the supervisor feels and how all the deputies feel, they can say, hey, you know what, Sarge? There's 6 of us here tonight. There's usually 11, but you know what, we can handle it. We're willing to work short this evening. We're willing to pick up the extra slack. So that's the difference there. Wage, the most important part. Seriously. For the deputy trainee position, and now remember, you're only a trainee for 6 months during the period of the academy. So whatever it turns out being, it's about 24 bucks an hour to start. It gives you an hourly range because there are some other things you can do. Like, let's say, for example, you worked with us as a custody deputy and you made some merit increases, or maybe you were even a supervisor at that level. There's a likelihood what we would do is we would start you at a top step trainee position, which is 30 bucks an hour. So, communications dispatcher, the starting wage for that one right now is $22 an hour and up to $27 an hour. That's just for the dispatcher 1 position, which is kind of your entry level position. It'd probably take you about 2 years to make dispatcher 2, and there's a different bump for that. Custody deputy. Custody deputies right now start at $24.92 an hour. Okay. The difference between the biggest difference between custody deputy and deputy sheriff is that deputy sheriff requires you to go to a law enforcement academy, a basic peace officers academy. That's what I did. I didn't want to work in the jail. Our custody deputy position is kind of an on-the-job type training position where you actually go there. Within 1 year's time, you're required to complete our basic academy. We have an in-house academy. It's 10 weeks in length, 3 different components. We have a post component where you're going to learn things that are specific to peace officers. We have an in-house component where you're going to learn things that are our in-house policies and procedures and things of that nature. And then there's STC, which is the governing body that handles training for all correctional facilities. So like CDCR and the prison system adhere to that standard. So it's 10 weeks in length and it's held in-house. So we'll put our custody deputies through that. Sheriff's deputy, this is after you get off of field training, basically an A-step deputy sheriff out there on the street. So you see it's quite a bump in pay. If you started out at $24 an hour as a trainee for 6 months, upon graduation, you're getting a huge raise, which is great. Right now, I'm a special duty deputy. I'm a background investigator with the Sheriff's Department. Currently making $38.80 an hour. Annually, it says $80,000, but last year I made $103,000. So there's some other things I get, education incentive. I have some specialty duty pay that I get, and some other things. Plus, I work a lot of overtime, which is why so many of you look familiar from Mountain Iowa. Benefits. Got to have your benefits. Sick leave. Sick leave's important. People get sick. The cool thing about sick leave is this. Let's say I work 28 years, 29 years, 30 years, whatever. My sick leave keeps accumulating. I don't use sick leave. I just don't get sick for some reason. And what happens is you increase this bank of sick leave. Now, if you have, at the end of your career, let's say you have 2,080 hours of sick leave accumulated. That translates into 1 entire year of service. So I'm going to leave at 29 years. Let's say 29 years. I just got to pull the plug. I can't do this job anymore. I got to go. My back hurts. I got high blood pressure. Whatever the case may be, I just got to go. I can have total 30 years credit because the county's going to give me an additional year of service credit for that sick leave that I didn't use. Vacation time. Vacation's always good. You need to have that. Medical and dental coverage. There's a whole different host of medical and dental opportunities for the department. Holidays. This is the cool part. Right now I'm in an administrative position, so I take my holidays off. But when I go back to patrol, which I'll be doing shortly, I'll get holiday pay. So regardless if I worked Lincoln's birthday or Memorial Day or Thanksgiving Day or something like that, let's say that fell on my regular days off, I still get paid for it. So it's an extra incentive of maybe $4,000 a year for me. So this is great. This is where all the extra money comes in. Retirement. Currently, we're in the 3 at 50 formula, which means for every year of service, I get 3% of my base salary, and I'm eligible to retire when I turn 50 years old. Probably not going to retire at 50, but wishful thinking. For specialized duties, we get $75 a paycheck for specialty things. Special enforcement team, which is the SWAT team. I'm on the sheriff's mounted unit, so I get paid an additional $75 a paycheck to ride my horse for the department. K-9 gets extra money because they work a longer work week, because their partner, who's their dog, goes home with them, the grooming, the training, all this additional things, so they've negotiated a pretty good package there. Uniform allowance, $825 a year extra for my uniforms. And the department ends up initially paying for quite a few of them. They're pretty good quality, so they last a long time, as long as you're not abusive with them. Bilingual allowance. I'm not going to assume, but I would imagine that a number of you are fluent in a different language, whether it's Spanish, Italian, who knows what. You have the opportunity to get $30 extra per pay period for showing proficiency in that language. And as I was talking about the specialty duty pay, just to kind of throw it out there, I get $75 bi-weekly for being on the mounted unit, for riding my horse in parades and stuff like that. So that's my presentation. Again, I cannot impress upon you enough how important it is to be truthful. If you come to me and just say, hey, you know, in all honesty, this is what I got going on in my background, I'm going to be honest with you. I will tell you, you might want to look at a different thing. You might want to look at a different career choice. Or, you know what? Wait a year. You've been honest. You've been truthful. Think of it in terms of the balance, the scale. There's negative and positive things. Positive things, negative things. If we are at least on even ground, we're going to go forward with your background. But if you start digging yourself into a hole, we just probably can't work with you. So I'll be here for a long time, and I'll answer any questions you may have. But now I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Mahoney. And I thank you for your time.
One thing I will say about the background investigation, before you turn in your background investigation, make a copy of it. And I'll tell you why I had the copy of my background investigation. 12 years later, I applied to go to an FBI training program back at Quantico, Virginia. Guess what? The FBI did a background on me. Yeah, I've been a cop for 12 years. They did a background investigation on me. I had to fill out that form again. If I hadn't checked my original background investigation form, there are things I'd forgotten about my own background. Because you get older. Okay. That's all I got.